Hello and welcome to Royale Without Cheese, our bi-weekly podcast in which we discuss both the classic and the unknown of art and popular cinema from the then and now. We are your hosts, me, Leonardo Miranda, and Tomás Ferreira.
Hey.
Unfortunately, Mike couldn't join us in this episode. Today we talk about A Touch of Zen, but before any ados, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, or simply give us a like. A Touch of Zen is a two-part 1971 Wuxia film written, co-edited, and directed by King Hu. Its screenplay is based on a classic Chinese story, Jianu, in the book Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio by Pu Songling. The film is set in the Ming Dynasty, following a lady fugitive on the run from corrupt government officials as she is joined in her endeavors by an unambitious painter and skilled Buddhist monks. The film was produced in Taiwan, and it was nominated for the Palme d'Or at the 1975 Cannes Film Festival, winning the Technical Grand Prix, the second ever Chinese language film to win an award at the festival. It seems we have a poetic epic of the highest order standing before us, but was Royale Without Cheese really that impressed with this spiritual quest mixing flying swordsmen and Buddhist sunbathing magic? Tomás, what do we say? Did you achieve Nirvana?
Nirvana. Yes, I achieved Nirvana in such a way that my head started glowing with the sun. But I mean, I swear to God, when that happened, when that shot of the abbot in the movie happened with the sun behind him, I laughed my ass. But not in the sense of laughing at the movie. I was laughing with the movie. Like I was enjoying so much the daring, his daringness to do that shot with that point of view of a guy impressed with the sun behind another guy's bald head. And the power, the mystical power that had, that I was just, the inherent reaction that I have when I like something is like, I laugh out loud to the campiness of it, to the degree I started clapping and pointing at the movie. And that's what I like. So I started laughing, just applauding the film and pointing at it. Insane, crazy, like, way to go, film, way to go. Good that you did that. But look, it's an incredible film. I don't think it's perfect in some points, but I guess
I think it's
that's
perfect.
open to perception. I think it's pretty strong, nevertheless. It's pretty amazing. It's quite a voyage. I really like it. And yeah, I mean, where can we start? It's a 3-hour film. It's difficult to
It's a lot.
pick
It's a lot.
something to start. But I mean, what I mean to say that is sometimes difficult to accompany the film is that the protagonism is a bit blurred between this lady fugitive and Gu, because at the start of the film, I interpret the protagonist as being Gu, like the painter and scholar that we find at that forgotten city that is, well, city village that is constructed in rubble, like inside this forgotten temple, these ruins. I think it's him, and I'm very attached to him because we start with him. I very much sympathize with his situation. He's so interesting, and he's such an honorable dude. And she's also interested, but because we start with him, and his whole problem is that he's kind of, arrested in this place where he is unambitious, but that's fine. He has his principles. He wants to do his little thing. He has a little painter shop where he does his little portraits of these passerby people in his village. He's very kind. He wants to open a school for other painters. He doesn't want to become an official like his mother wants him to be, and it's kind of interesting how we have these very strong female figures in the film as well, which is interesting because when you think of this film Wuxia, you think of what's the equivalent in the Western world, and if you think of westerns, cowboys, and you think of what would be that in Japan, okay, samurais, Kurosawa. So what we have here, very similar things, but in both those worlds, women don't traditionally have very powerful kind of stances, and in this film, it's super amazing to find a warrior feminine figure that is super fucking badass, And there's the kind of what's her name? Yang, yes, I think it's Yang, who kind of ends up becoming his love interest. And then you have the mother, and the mother is kind of the pressure point to him in the beginning to kind of become something else, to in the traditional sense of start a family, gain money, make us leave this desolate, abandoned place of a town built in rubble, essentially, in the ruins of a temple. And who comes along is essentially this figure of Yang, also from a poorer family, but who could be the beginnings of a new family, and so a new stability for Gu and his mother. but he doesn't want anything of that. So the characters are set up. The problem is set up. You know, this stranger comes to town, who he makes a painting of, who is
Hu
God damn
Yang.
it, another name.
Hu
Oh
Yang.
Yang, I
Hu
think.
Yang. Yeah.
And he's also interesting, and he creates, because we have these two mysterious characters of Wu Yang and Yang, who he comes across with. You're always at the first setup of the film kind of playing around with who is the villain, who is the antagonist, who is the mean force behind these strange happenings. Because they're within the castle, like the temple where his house is closely kind of set by, the temple, the fourth, has this kind of strangely ghost apparitions happening at one point, which are actually kind of Wuxia warriors jumping in the distance on the rooftops. And it can be either Wu Yang kind of seeking this fugitive who is Yang, this kind of a princess who is the daughter of this nobleman, I think, who found out a corrupt official from the Eastern Depot, which is essentially where Wu Yang is from. You know, he works for the Eastern Depot, which is the secret police of the Ming Dynasty. They found a corrupt official. The father of here, the princess warrior, found that out, and so her and her family got all screwed over and sent to jail except her. She's on the run. So Gu, our character, our main guy, finds this all up and is kind of going into this underworld. And the beginning of the film is a lot of display with who is the antagonist, who is the one I shouldn't trust, and that's all very interesting. But at certain points, the film kind of dismisses him, and he becomes a background character. And in those moments, because I get such a tie with him, it's difficult because I'm like, where is Gu? Especially towards the end, I'm like, where's Gu? Especially towards the end, I'm like, we focus a lot on her and her voyage, and then he's kind of related to this character who is rewarded with a baby. So there you go, take the baby, shoo, go away. And then like,
Rewarded.
and then
questionable.
at least in the sense that
She's
that
giving
was his
up.
goal.
She's giving up the worldly affairs. She's giving up the baby.
Yes,
and
she
giving up
is that.
So it's it's not a reward.
But the thing, what is she giving up? Did she really wanted to be with him?
I mean, it's not whether she wanted or not. It's like it's a symbolic thing. It's like she's achieving like a spiritual awakening and has to leave worldly affair behind this. I mean, I don't think it matters that much if she was super attached to him or not. I mean, it's a baby. She gave birth to a baby.
I understand that idea. A baby in the background, a baby which is this warrior woman has, like, while sword fighting and whatever. Oh yeah, I'm totally carrying a baby for 9 months, which just passed. Like, what? I'm like, what? Okay, but fine, I can buy it. And the thing is, because I'm so attached to his point of view, because we started with him and I sympathize with him first and foremost. She's more of the outer character. I don't see her. I can understand the intention of the movie of making her protagonist, but I don't know enough of her. She's the mystery to me. So I know some pointers
but
to
the
her,
main character,
yeah,
I agree with that. That's true.
So to me, it's a reward to him. I'm thinking
back
to what was his initial goal. You understand? To what was set up in the beginning. Oh yeah,
he didn't want the baby. He never wanted.
But he didn't want the baby anyway. It was his mother. But it was that whole situation from the beginning, you understand? So I'm not thinking, oh yeah, she's giving worldly affairs. I don't care about her giving up worldly affairs. But the matter is, in that scene, of her giving up the baby and joining the monks, that is very much the protagonist action. It's her giving up the worldly affair. But I don't feel it has the protagonist action because I am tied to Gu. So it's I'm a little bit conflicted there.
I just think that's like.
And then the scene we go to, it's evidently her fighting this big boss guy, and she becomes kind of a protagonist.
But it's
and
not
I'm like,
just her.
Let's go back to
her fighting.
What happened to Gu? So
no, but like what you're saying, I understand. I understand what you're saying. I just think that that's why on the first time I didn't love the film as much. I loved it a lot though, but I didn't love it as much. Where this time I was so much more in tune with these things.
So you're like telling me, don't worry, Tomás. Your first time,
no.
I did not understand either, but you're going to understand it.
No, because I didn't feel it as much as you did. Like the way you're saying it's a lot more intense for you. For me, it was like, oh, I would like to see a bit more of Gu, but it doesn't bother me. I think the film is so beautiful and so perfect in other ways. It doesn't matter. But yeah, on this rewatch, I followed the story a lot better because it's so spiritual. It's so like it's so out of this world that to me
Oh,
like
for
these
sure.
matters of like, oh, who is the protagonist? It's sort of beyond what the intentions of the film are.
Uh-huh.
It's almost intentional that Goo doesn't become and doesn't have a traditional story arc that we'd
Of
be
course.
normally used to, because the film is so, it's so transcendental. Like that's so strange, and
Okay, that makes sense.
it's strange. Like it, in theory, I totally get what you mean. Like it shouldn't work, or it isn't like the way we're taught to write, but
Exactly.
it
And
is.
you see all these actions where he formed the plan with the ghosts, he tried to make it happen. And then the film does a 30, 60 degree, a 360-degree turn when the plan goes down the drain. Everybody dies. The ghosts seem to be real because it seems like the evil spirits actually become angry. At least that's what gets suggested. The evil spirits that you don't know if they actually exist in the castle, but what gets suggested, at least for me, is that the evil spirits actually exist and they were offended that this mere mortal tried to use them to have this sort of strategic game of play to fool the Eastern Depot agents. So in the next morning, he wakes up, everybody's dead, except Yang, who joins the monastery, which is quite the. I think she joins because everybody died. Why does she join the monastery? Everybody dies, so
I'm
she
not sure.
decides to.
I see. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a
probably.
little bit
I
strange.
mean, she doesn't.
No
She
B-heavy
goes back
movie
to
to
the
know.
monastery. She'd already been
She
there
goes back, of
before.
course. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
why?
sort of a safe haven, I guess. It's sort of
And like the
a place of
baby,
comfort.
it's so much stuff happening at the same time. Baby, oh, I decided to go back to a monastery, and I don't know exactly why. And suddenly Gu is out of the picture, and for so long he was the main guy who concocted this plan. We're following him. He decides to join forces with the prince, and then we, como é que eu ia dizer isto? Tipo, é o verbo despojado, we are stripped in kind of in a Zen way. We are stripped of these worldly affairs. Nothing matters. Which I guess in your stance, in your argument, this all this stuff starts to
Because
make
then
sense.
that's when the film then goes to like a
Oh yeah,
completely insane
complete berserk,
level. Yeah,
surrealist
to me,
imagery.
that's why I guess it doesn't bother me that we lose the main character, because the film just gets so much better. Like it becomes.
Super. If you thought you saw enough, think again. Like
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's why on the first time I was a bit more. "Well, why is he going away? Where's Goo? What's going on?" And
right,
then
right,
you're
right,
watching the film, but on a rewatch, I already know that the last 40 minutes
right, right.
are just some of my favorite things like I've ever seen. It's like the editing is perfect.
Oh
Everything
yeah,
is
for
so
sure.
amazing that I just want to get to it. So it's almost like, get the fuck out of here, Goo. The hell are you doing?
Uh-huh.
Your
Yeah,
worldly
yeah, yeah.
affairs don't matter in this world, man.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
You have a baby, get out of here. Yeah, but I know what you mean. And also I have watched other films by the director King Hu,
Right.
uh, which have the exact same thing. Like they don't have a main traditional character, or the person that you think is the main character then by the end of the film is completely gone. And in the first film I watched, which is Come Drink With Me, I think it's called, in that one it did bother me a lot more, because the main character is this woman, like she's very interesting. And then there's this other guy who's like a drunken master. It's an archetype of a
Uh-huh,
character,
uh-huh.
and he teaches her a lot of things. And then the whole third act is just him fighting some other fucking dude, and she's completely like in the
Out of the
periphery. And
picture.
that one, it did bother me. It's like, well, I was interested in her, and because the film doesn't have these ideas that this one film has, doesn't have so much of like this transcendental power. And that one, I think it's a little weaker. But you see
Right,
the
right.
inklings of what he's trying to do. And then the next film he does is Dragon Hin, which I watched because I watched the Tsai Ming Liang film, the Goodbye Dragon Hin, and I was like, oh, that's an interesting film. I
I
want to
was
watch the
wondering if
original.
there was a connection. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's, I don't know if you ever saw that one. It's a
I
theater
know
showing
both.
a film. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it's a teaser showing. Now I know that is the film, but I need to check out both Dragon Inn and Goodbye Dragon Inn. I need to
yeah.
see
In
that.
that one as well, like the matter of protagonism is also kind of diluted and not as clear. But in this one, I get what you mean, because the way it starts, it's like, okay, it's Gu is the main character. We're establishing his shortcomings. We're establishing what are supposedly the things that he needs to achieve, and what are his principles. And then by the end, it kind of all disappears.
Dissolves.
Yeah.
But you made your case. I agree. I can see that. I can see how it's that old tale, some films in the second viewing, the third viewing, that's when you discover more in really the core of them, their soul. And yeah, now I understand that move of the film. And sometimes we find ourselves in situations where the director has a certain style and certain kind of quirks of choice in narrative that repeat from film to film. And sometimes you wonder, is this, because in this particular film it works because of these themes, it's fine. But then in other films it doesn't work at all, or it doesn't work as much.
I
For
mean, I do
example,
wonder
the
if
ones
maybe
you.
I'll go back to that first film and maybe now I'll like it more because I'm more familiar with it and maybe
Mhm.
it'll make more sense. But yeah, at the time, that's the way
So
I
what
felt.
I mean to say is it like a flaw of the director that he keeps choosing this kind of narrative structure that in the end doesn't work, or because in this particular film it worked. I can see why now.
From the three films I've watched, in two of them it works. So, I
Right, right,
mean,
right.
and it works for me. I think it's a stylistic choice. It's just
Yeah,
the way he likes his films.
definitely. And going just to the imagery and the surreal imagery in this film, it's very interesting how the film opens without any sense of point of view connected to a character. It's transcendental already in the sense that you're not bounded to a character, you're bound to the environment, to the landscape. And it all starts with these motifs of the spider web, which even more connects me to Gu because he is the little guy from the low social class, which normally tends to be the hero in Wuxia films. It's not like this big nobleman. These swordsmen come from low grounds, and so it's the fly in the spider web. It's going on to a world that is way wider, bigger, and more difficult than he can imagine. And also with that motif comes a lot of others, but it's very interesting how we cut from that spider web in the middle of the forest and we start to wander from the forest progressively to this little river creek and suddenly start to see these ruins in the middle of the mountains and we go inside the castle and it's super amazing and we go into this far off land that we don't quite understand or know and you certainly realize that it's a village built from nothing and it's quite impressive and how he creates these fight scenes in this atypical way in the middle of these not hayfields but these junks or I don't know what they're called. I have a lot of those nearby. This kind of plants with the plumage, the white plumage, and that's difficult to choreograph. And the way he does it is by using a lateral traveling, where he doesn't really cut a lot. He just allows the fight to present itself, and at every given moment he stops, allows one movement to be created, and continues as the characters move in the landscape, and he just follows them laterally. He has a tracking shot. It's
Mhm.
quite interesting. But I do appreciate more when I don't have obstruction in front of me, when I don't have leaves. It creates a mysterious environment, I know, and it's curious, but I like it more when you have the final fight in the forest and the whole light piercing through the trees, and you can see them a lot more. And I think one of the most beautiful tricks creating that in those fight choreographies is when they give these huge jumps flying through the air, and you can if before you had the geographical exception of where the people were and how they were directing their blows and their fight movements. You know, when they jump, you lose completely a sense of the geographic notion of the space, which is amazing. The moment they jump and the editing starts acting this fast editing pace, you don't know where they're going to land. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to get hurt. And that creates this whole confusion that is completely tearing the realm of the senses in the realm of the other, of the spiritual, of whatever is guiding their chi. So that's quite interesting. I think that confusion together with clarity of where they're going and who they are aiming at, with various different styles of blows, throwing the blades, the shurikens, or using the swords, or using the hand-to-hand combat. That's very interesting. And one of the things that also is complicated about the film is the boss levels. Who is the antagonist really? It's quite complicated
Yeah, no,
to understand. I cannot get my head around who are we fighting, and that complicates a bit. I get it in general. It's this kind of spy secret police, but I would like to have one guy. It's at one point he's Wu Yang, but then he dies, and then it's we are told is this other guy who then I guess he dies too. He comes and he's assaulted by Gu and Yang and her team at night at the fort through that whole ghost charade thing. But I don't know if he dies. I assume he does in the next morning. And then beyond him, there comes another guy in the forest who were just now being presented to him, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I mean, I don't know who you are. Like this other, I have no connection to this new antagonist, and I would sort of like at least be mentioning passage like in words, so I have an idea of, oh, this long shadowy villain is coming. He's coming. He's the Sauron of them all is coming. But no, he just appears, and I'm supposed to feel afraid of him. I mean, he's tremendous in the way he fights. Yang has never seen such an opponent. I know, I can tell that, but the weight of who he is should be there on the scene, and it just isn't. So sometimes I have trouble with just these notions of like, how do I connect with the weight of who this villain is? Just a guy they're trying to beat. And sure, he's a bit more difficult than the ones we've seen before, but what's the story behind them? What's the thing? I think it's a bit difficult to connect. What I have to say is that every guy who's dressed in yellow it's the most difficult boss to kill. He's dressed in yellow, like the monk, so he will be difficult. That was my idea. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, that didn't bother me. It doesn't.
Mm.
Um,
Doesn't
especially
bother you
next
that
season.
some guy comes up, oh yeah, I'm super like amazing, and what do you think now?
Yeah, no, I buy
That's
it.
just,
I
just,
mean,
just you buy it, okay.
I buy that. Now there's this guy because of course there is, a whole net web of people who are after this princess. Uh, I understand that,
That
and
I
I get what
understand.
you
I
mean.
just would like, you get to sort of in other films you have the sort of in the back of your mind you have the awareness of who is the next boss or who
Yeah,
is
but
the
you
next
get
big
things,
guy
and
coming.
you get things, and some movies don't have, the beauty that this film has. So, okay, they're a little better written, I guess, but they don't even come close to
That is true. I can't argue there.
this,
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm okay with not having a setup for the final bad guy. Like if every movie that has a final bad guy that comes out of nowhere, let's say if every movie does that, but it does it in this way where, it has some of the most beautifully choreographed and edited, and like the lighting and the way the nature interacts with it. If every movie did that, then I'd be like, okay, I excuse it. It's all right. But not every movie does this. So it's like, you know what I mean?
I think, I think one thing doesn't cancel the other. You can have both elements
You
in
can
the
have
film.
both, but it doesn't break the film at all, and it doesn't even,
I'm not even saying that breaks the film, and I would
like, if
watch
you
it
had
again.
a
And
scene earlier in the film where they're like, but there's this one dude, he's the bad one, and then he comes back in the end. It's like, okay, they set it up, but to what ends? Like, did it really change it that much? I don't know if it does.
I
You'd
think
have
I
to
think
rewrite.
sometimes there are those little turns of the screw that help the audience have a little idea of the incoming fear of the
I just
incoming.
no, I just don't think the plot itself, like that, these things are the most important thing in this film.
Right.
Like the spiritual realm is the main focus here. It's like how
But do you
and how
feel the
that
spiritual
relates.
realm that much? I only feel it in the end mostly.
It's there throughout. I mean, the first 5 minutes to me are the spiritual realm. It's like,
Oh yeah, definitely.
and it immediately communicates that the worldly affairs are insignificant in the grand scheme of nature.
Oh yeah, for
You
sure,
know,
for sure. I feel
and
like I
there's
get
always
it. I think
smoke.
maybe
The character's always surrounded by smoke. Yeah, yeah.
no, yeah, definitely, definitely. Maybe I need to get to my second watch, and I definitely agree that the beginning, as we've been describing with the spider web, the mountains, that it's there, and then there's certain pulls throughout the first, second parts of the film where we get reaffirmations of that spirit realm. But there's a lot throughout that is the plot, and the machinations of Ku trying to get inside this life, and so when they almost seem separate. Whenever I see Gu and his mother and the questionings of the family, which is more like social realism ideas, kind of thing with how to make money, how to make ends meet, how to elevate yourself in society, those things that revert you back, those ideas of the social realism of things. I get a little bit lost into the spiritual realm and more focus on the plot per se. So let's call it so. And sometimes they feel far apart, in that first part and second part. Sometimes they feel almost separate. Let's have a little bit of social realism, let's have a little bit of spiritualism. So the spiritualism comes back, for example, when he has that love scene with Yang, and she's singing to him, and there's the whole nature around them, and the flies and the butterflies and whatnot, and not really butterflies, but a sense of them, a sense of like living nature around them. But yeah, they almost seem separate. They don't seem in tandem.
Yeah, to me,
Gu,
I didn't feel that, but I understand.
mm,
I mean, even when they're discussing these things, these matters to me, like the money or you become an official and things like that, because the film is dealing with these spiritual things. To me, it's also highlighting how these things by the end won't matter. Like what happens to, like, if he becomes an official or not. He kind of becomes an official in the sense of he plots something and he uses his book knowledge to destroy an army, but for what? Like, he just sees death all around him, and and he kind of gets punished for it because he, as you were saying, like, he used the spiritual world to achieve a worldly thing that only caused pain and destruction.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
And that's sort of the running idea towards the end as well, which is that other guy who then tries to get back with the monks by saying, "Oh, I'm haunted by demons of the people I've killed. All these ghosts surround me." And the monk, for a moment, is like, "Oh, okay." He accepts him, and again, but gets stabbed. Like, I think
Gets
that's the
stabbed,
worst.
and then it doesn't even matter, even when
Yeah,
he gets stabbed.
he's like bleeding gold. Yeah, but that's sort of the worst thing you can do in this film for the spiritual world is like to use the spiritual world to achieve your worldly affairs. And I think that's what happens in the end. Like, the guy like hits him in the forehead, and he gets like a little thing and becomes kind of possessed and starts seeing the world inverted
And
in all
throws
these
himself
strange
and dies.
colors, and kills the other two guys. It's like he's being and kills himself. It's just like, to me, the way I interpreted it is he becomes possessed to kill all evil, and all the evil around him is himself and the
Right,
other two guys.
right.
And
Makes
that's the way I
sense. Yeah,
saw
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
And
powerful.
how do you
It's all.
find like the transition between the forest to that barren landscape? What do you find the meaning in that, in that transition?
I don't know. I'm sure you probably can come up with a better meaning than I can. To me, it's just like it's a nice change of scenery because we spent so long in the
In the
forest,
forest.
that now we need something a bit
Uh-huh.
wider,
Uh-huh.
and also, what happens in the end makes more sense to happen in a location like that. I don't think you can really do something in that way, especially with the sun. Like, he needs to be in an elevated spot.
Like everything is exposed. There's no place to hide, no place to. Which is a lot to do with what he's trying to do. The antagonist at that point, he's trying to open up and surrender himself, and I think that's the idea. There's a reset. It's a reboot. That's away with the forest, away with the trees. I'm trying to cleanse myself and be open to this, supposedly, which he then isn't. But for the good and the bad, if he tricks them, the monks and Buddhism and Zen Buddhism and the whole religion and the spiritual exposes him back, and turns himself against him, like you said, and uses his evil against him by possessing him. I think that the end of this film is a lot reminiscent of what will happen later with Passion of Christ, with a film directed by Martin Scorsese. The ending of that film is a very
The Last Temptation.
the last temptation of
Okay,
Christ.
it
I
was like
said
Mel
the
Gibson.
temptation. No, 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 no. That was the passion of passion. The passion? What is the passion of
Mel
Christ?
Gibson is the Passion of Christ.
The passion of Christ. I said the temptation of Christ. But what I meant to say was the last temptation of Christ, by Martin Scorsese. It also has an ending that is very spiritual and that I love, where that makes the film where Jesus is on the cross, played by Willem Dafoe, and he sees this alternate ending, or this alternate way to live his life, where he would have married Mary Magdalene, and he wouldn't have lived the burden of being the chosen one, being Jesus, and leading on with his message of good on earth and being kind to your fellow man and whatnot, and the religion that is Christianity. And what would that entail? The world would have gone to pieces. And so he chooses to be the chosen one. He chooses to carry this burden and to serve as an example, and he dies on the cross. And there's almost this time travel thing where he's sucked out of his vision, because in his vision, already an old man, he cries to the heavens and, "Make me your son again. I want to be the chosen one." While like Jerusalem is burning or whatever, and everything is in smoke, and he's like dragging himself through the sand, and it's amazing. And you have this big traveling, shot back to his face, like this to the face of Jesus, a bit like, the antagonist is hit in the face by the monk and has this utter vision of kind of nirvana. So does Jesus with accepting kind of his fate, actually not his faith, but his fate, to similar words. Yeah, his fate, and he says it has been accomplished, and dies, and then the celluloid film kind of breaks in, and you have this chant, "Ooh," and then it just blows, and the celluloid film blows, and it's like the film kind of also enters in frame and assumes itself. This is fiction, but reality at the same time. What is it? And it transcends the realm of fiction, and reality itself. It's on another world, another plane, and Peter Gabriel's music comes in, and it's a sort of, combining bells from the church with 80s sensitivities, and it's great and it's amazing. It's called "It Is Accomplished." I have shared it already on Facebook, and it's pretty good. I really love it, and it's always a song that brings me back to Sunday school, and when I did feel inspired by, the religious side of it and spirituality, and when you felt whole by it, when you felt inspired by those things, which wasn't often. When I in Easter, I used to watch all the time. It's like Jesus movies.
Of course.
By my own initiative, because I love them. I love the story of it, and the guy making the ultimate sacrifice and the transformation of it. And this song is something I always come back to, because it makes me come back to that place of becoming something bigger, and the spirit of giving, and like you say, surrendering worldly affairs and the ego. To that sense, if anything, to that sense, that idea that can be something that everybody can connect with, regardless of spiritualism. And so, yeah, I think this ending is also brings in a touch of Zen, brings the same sensibilities, is why people can connect with it so well, because you can also bring so many forms of interpretation to it, of what you're seeing. That castle in the mountains, the monk, perhaps after he died, achieving nirvana and being, in that double negative view. I think there's almost like slow motion being played with the images. I'm not sure. The guy destroys himself and dies. Yeah, and there's this beautiful wide shot of these characters: the general still alive, the princess running to this little mountain, like this little slope, where it's this little slope, a mini mountain. It's so tiny, where she tries to go over it. It's where the monk has gone. After being stabbed,
Yeah.
goes up the slope and vanishes. So does the antagonist. He goes up the slope and vanishes, but to the wrong. He dies. He commits suicide by being possessed. And then the princess goes up the slope, but it's always almost impossible to go up that little mountain. And almost the idea of the little mountain, there's almost impossible to go up. But if you're strong-willed enough, it's almost an idea of what Zen can be. If you focus enough, if you leave worldly distractions, because Zen, in rough translation, is meditation. That's what it is, So it's that little act of focusing on one thing, of one gesture. She goes up to it, but I think she doesn't find anything. She doesn't transcend. She doesn't kill herself. There's no wrongdoing.
She's just
Maybe her journey is one of is one of continuation. She still has a long way to go. But yeah, what do you make of those final moments?
Yeah, but my interpretation is more, is what you're saying. She's in her journey, and I see, when she kind of kneels down and looks up and sees Buddha, and then it cuts to, we see Gu again with the child, and he also falls to his knees. I don't know, I feel like it kind of connects them again, and there's a sense of possibility that they get connected again directly, like that she maybe still has a connection to them that doesn't have to be entirely rejected. And she looks up at the Buddha and he's transcending. I don't know what she's seeing. I don't know what she's feeling, but you get a sense that she and Gu are seeing the same thing, because that's the implication of
tied in the same moment. Yeah,
exactly. Even though they're like completely far apart. That's the way I saw it. I thought it was a very beautiful ending.
I also love the way the movie plays with point of view. It's extremely close to Gu in that respect in the first part, but also it uses it's like how should I say this? It uses quite well this dance between silence and explosions of emotion or explosions of action. It's all very quiet. You're following a very simple action. For example, Gu in the castle, in the fort, trying to figure out who are these strange happenings in the fort, which is just before he meets up with Princess kind of Yang, which, so it's probably her living in that fort. She has already kind of settled there. And he enters the place. It's all very ghostly, all very haunted, and it's very dark. And it's this combination of cutting between him and his very quiet face, looking, and then cutting back to what is his point of view of what is happening, and you see the leaves blowing in the wind very quietly, these shadowy figures on the rooftops. And the film repeats these devices, narrative and visual device of presenting the situations to you in various situations, like the fight scenes where they look where their next opponent is going to come from. The little quietness of analyzing where it's going to come from, then cut, boom. And then eventually explosion of action, them fighting together and clashing. You're always, it's this push and pull, this tension and, distension, kind of happening, that works very well in the film to this sense of a very grounded reality where very little happens, small town, and suddenly spectacle, the realm of the spiritual, shadowy figures in the dark, wind blowing in the distance, these sounds of leaves going.
The way nature is incorporated into almost everything in the film all the time, because the place where they live and the way he frames the characters, there's always like a tree behind them. There's always the wind or the smoke or, thunder in the background. There's always nature around them. I think it's a very powerful use of those of the elements, especially connected to the ideas of the film, of the spiritual. Definitely on the first watch, that was the thing that struck me the most, even though a lot of the plot machinations, and even now, like some of it, I'm not entirely sure about what's happening sometimes, but those things keep me grounded. It's just such a sensorially, like, it's such a powerful film. I love looking at it. And yeah, and those last 40 minutes is amazing.
Yeah. I need to watch more Wuxia films. For a long time I wanted to, but I never managed to get around to it. And
I've only watched,
this was the first time.
Yeah, I've only watched from this director, so it's like 3 Wuxia films from the same director. So it's not even.
It's a good start, I mean, if you want to start anywhere, that's there.
I just mean the sense that I don't even have a sense of the tropes, because I think this film even is like kind of
atypical, they say.
Atypical and kind of deconstructive. Like it's not fully, it subverts some expectations of the Wuxia film, I think, from what I've read. So it's like from that side, I'm not even getting the full picture of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, but King Hu is an interesting one, and it's a good place to start, because I personally found him out through the History of Film documentary with Mark Cousins.
Of course.
And definitely, exactly. And definitely touches, and immediately I was like, what is this? Who is this? This is amazing. Like, tipo, A Touch of Zen was the one where, like, A Touch of Zen, 3 hours, and I was like, I need to watch that. But I never got around to it. And when I knew through that documentary and I saw the images, and I was completely astounded. What is this? Amazing. And A Touch of Zen, it felt like a challenge. Like, can you watch this? Like this long thing, and the amazing fights and etc. So that King Hu was the name that stuck in my mind. I remember in class also the history teacher once talking about kind of Wuxia and etc. And he said if anybody knew anything about it, any filmmaker, and I said King Hu. There you go. That's a nice. That's the only one I know.
I know things. I'm a guy who knows things.
But yeah, there was that, and the other mentions on that documentary. And yeah, it's interesting. I always wanted to get around it, never did. But yeah, finally I got to see A Touch of Zen. And I saw other things that I saw was really the homage in the 2000s. There was a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but that's from Ang Lee. That was, the jumps are much bigger. The jumps the characters do are way higher, and they even fight in trees in this unrealistic way that is great. I mean, not unrealistic in a negative way, but they balance in trees. They are super thin. It's impossible. So they're just there.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite crazy. That was a good one, and of course the Western contributions to Wuxia, Kung Fu Panda, and
of course,
and Kung Fu Pao Enter the Fist. Yeah. today I wouldn't be able to watch it full, but it's pretty funny if you catch it on the internet. Because it's creatively
I've only
done.
seen it in clips that you've said. Yeah.
Yeah, well, when I think I saw it like on my 11th grade or 12th grade. It was like by surprise on the TV, and I shared it with my cousin and other guys, and we just couldn't stop laughing. It was just so stupid because it's creatively they are just creatively silly with it, with every scene. So yeah, it's pretty funny. Today I don't think I will be able to watch it from beginning to end. I tried. I was like, can't. But
I thought you watched it all.
I did watch it all. More than once at the time, like on my
No. I
11th
thought
grade.
you a few days ago. I thought you had watched
Oh,
it.
no.
Because you said you wanted to
No.
watch something dumb.
No. Maybe I'll try someday. But I remember trying recently. Like recently, I said like 1 or 2 years ago, and I was like, god damn it, I can't. But when I catching clips on the internet, it's always fun. Those little things.
And that's all for today. If you'd like to reach out and suggest a film for the next episode, you can find us on the podcast, official Instagram and website pages. Feel free to subscribe, share this episode, or simply give us a like. And that's how our podcast can grow ever more groovy. And if you're on YouTube and want to see more videos like this, check out this next video right here. Thanks for listening. See you next time.